Hello and welcome back to the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show. I am your host, Michael Stamatinos. And if you're new to us, man, we're super excited to have you here because we're bringing real stories of innovation, some exciting conversations with leaders that are painstakingly shaping the future of healthcare. And we're really passionate around leadership, innovation, adoption. And if it's your first time tuning in, let me just sort of take a quick step back and tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. Our focus is around bringing stories of innovation to life. So really, talking to real people that are getting stuff done and giving them the opportunity to share their stories with our community on our platform. If you haven't checked out any historical interviews, make sure you hit the subscribe button now, wherever you are, so that any new interviews come directly into your inbox. And as you know, our field is always evolving. Things are moving quickly. You need to be nimble. And it's crucial for us to have leaders that coming onto the show that really envision a future differently, that are embracing innovation and they're addressing pressing challenges. And we do have our fair share of pressing challenges that we're facing. So our next guest on the show is actually one of these leaders. Today, I'm thrilled to have a conversation with Dan Juberg, the Senior Vice President, Health and Head of Corporate Development and Payer Provider Strategy at CareSyntax. Dan, interesting guy. He's got a deep-seated passion for creating a more efficient and effective system of care. And his work has consistently aimed to create a more integrated, patient-centered healthcare experience. So CareSyntax integrates artificial intelligence, advanced software, and clinical services into health systems, transforming how surgeries are planned and executed. So under Dan's leadership, CareSyntax has made surgery smarter, safer by harnessing surgical intelligence to improve outcomes. So whether it's driving innovations in payment models or helping organizations transition to new approaches in care delivery, for a while, Dan's been shaping the future of value-based healthcare. And he's influenced how healthcare organizations approach surgical care, ensuring that it's safer, smarter, more efficient, and effective for patients. So we're thrilled to have Dan come onto the show, share a bit of experiences, some stories, some insights, some highlights, some lowlights. But Dan, welcome to the show. It's great to see you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here. And thank you for that introduction. I couldn't have said it any better myself.
Good thing we recorded it so we can, share it with your wife and your friends and your family so they know how awesome you are.
I'm going to forward it for sure.
Dan, you've had a pretty fascinating career trajectory, starting with your work at GE, Camden Group, and now as sort of a senior leader at CareSyntax. Can you maybe just sort of walk us through what initially sparked your passion for healthcare transformation?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't start out in healthcare, but I'm surrounded by healthcare from like a family perspective. Both my parents were healthcare professionals. My wife is a pediatrician. Her family are healthcare professionals. I went into finance out of school, and I kept having all these healthcare professionals around me saying, um, healthcare it has a lot of challenges. It doesn't make sense. We need good soldiers in the field. And the more I studied it, I saw that there was an opportunity to apply some of my background into an industry that was wildly
Mm.
inefficient, that wasn't serving patients the way that it needed to. And there was a lot of innovation to be had. And so 15 some odd years later, here I am passing through a bunch of innovative healthcare companies.
So you mentioned around sort of reviewing some of those challenges. What were some of those pivotal moments or even specific challenges that you noticed that sort of shaped how you approach innovation, and leadership for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I just think if you look at the numbers of our spend as a nation on healthcare, our relative outcomes versus other affluent nations, even just personal experience has kind of shaped which stops I've made along the way. Obviously, my wife is a primary care practitioner and sees how ineffective and inefficient some of the processes that they're forced to do, what's happened to a lot of the patient provider relationship. That sparked a lot of my interest to get into
Mm.
value-based care, to rethink the
Yeah.
value that is being derived through that patient-provider interaction.
Hmm.
And then even moving into like specialty care and surgical care, is a ton of misunderstanding about how safe surgery is. I have a personal experience with surgery. I tend to be drawn to organizations or sectors of the industry that I have some personal resonance. My grandfather, who I never met, died due to complications in an elective surgery at age 54. And so when I started to see
Wow.
that get more integrated into value-based care and integrated specialty care, I was kind of drawn to, making material progress in the surgical arena and giving it some of the same focus that has happened at the front end of the continuum over the past 10, 20 years.
Yeah, it sounds like, your vision, your mission, your personal vision and mission is around making, things, making progress occur and actualizing it. So CareSyntax is doing some pretty groundbreaking work in surgical intelligence. What initially drew you to the company? And it sounds like it just because it aligns with your mission and vision around healthcare innovation. Can you just sort of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly my background with my grandfather, my experience at my previous stop, Lumeris, which is a value-based enablement company, very focused on the front end of value-based care. I saw it getting to be a frothy space and the back end of the continuum not necessarily receiving the same level of rigor or Moneyball that the front end was. It was sort of just this black box. The front
Right.
50 cents, let's keep shaving the front 50 cents, but the back 50 cents is the cost of doing business. And I didn't quite understand that. And there were some companies that were starting to invest in this level of Moneyball in the back end of the continuum. And I started doing more research about just how dangerous surgeries can be. More than 5% of surgeries have complications. So, put your family, your parents, your children in that situation, something that we inherently trust, like surgery, that has a pretty high error rate. It was an opportunity to help be a part of building out something that you and I would want for our own families if
Is
they
that is
go under
that
the knife.
5% in America or 5% globally?
Um, I'm gonna have to check, but I'm pretty sure that's a global
Okay.
statistic. But even in developed countries, I want to say our chief clinical officer likes to say that 8% of deaths are surgery related, and that's in developed countries. So these are big numbers
Wow.
that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Of those 5%, about 50% of those are unnecessary complications. They're preventable, basically. They're not.
Hmm.
Not that any complication is necessary, but they're preventable complications. And so having the right risk alerts or protocols or the ability to study and teach the teams how to do things better could materially impact outcomes, could save lives. I think this is part of why we're all in healthcare is to improve this,
Hmm.
so that as it affects our neighbors, our family members, they'll experience better outcomes.
So for somebody listening into this, listen, surgical intelligence, it sounds like a futuristic concept. Would you mind breaking it down for us? I mean, what does it mean in practice and why is it transformative, for healthcare?
Yeah. So surgical intelligence, it's a somewhat new category that is being carved out. Um, I use the Moneyball example, which is a good fun one based on the book and what went on in the Major League Baseball. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but
Billy Bean.
utilize what's that?
Billy Bean. Yeah, right. Billy
Yeah,
Bean.
there we
Yeah, that's
go.
right.
Um, so obviously back in the day, baseball teams used to just kind of horde athletes, roll the ball on the field, and let the chips fall where they may. And if you had the better team, chances are you were going to win more of the games. As salaries grew, et cetera, teams had to be sharper with data and analytics and uncover insights that stacked their odds. Same thing is happening in surgery right now, where they're integrating data similar that has been done in value-based care, creating a longitudinal patient record and linking claims, financial data, ADT, lab pharma, et cetera, et cetera. Same
Right.
thing is going on within the perioperative arena, utilizing video, audio, patient engagement data, post-op data, et cetera, to create a richer experience that are giving us insights on our surgical teams, on what supplies interact best with what populations and subpopulations, being able to give us interactive live risk alerts that can change what we're doing before or during a surgery that will put our care teams and our patients in a better position. This is Moneyball for surgery. This is surgical intelligence right now. Think of it almost as like one of the futuristic applications of it is almost like a Google Maps or Waze for surgery,
Mm.
where we're connecting the dots between all of these various data feeds. We have video on there because we're a patient safety organization and can collect and protect data. And we're able to say, hey, something's amiss right now. Turn left here. It'll materially, increase your odds of having a more successful surgery, of less hospital-acquired conditions or surgical site infections. Big things for the patients and providers.
Interesting. I mean, as I'm thinking about all these different areas in which you're gathering data and trying to make sense out of them, I'd be remiss I mean, listen, AI is a big buzzword right now, and adopting AI and advanced analytics within our space, it doesn't come without resistance. Yeah, what are the biggest hurdles that you and the team have faced as it pertains to uh, convincing stakeholders, of its value?
Yeah, I mean, I think responsible AI, I think data rights and usage, I think video can, most doctors and care teams love it, but there's a lot that are stuck in their ways. I mean, we deal with surgeons, right? And surgeons have long been at the top of the pile, very successful within their organizations, and many of them have sort of a confidence or bravado in the way that they practice. And so to shine a light and say, hey, maybe there's an opportunity for your team to do better, or maybe you're missing the steps of the checklist, which is leading to some of the infections that we're experiencing, or some of the lag in our turnover time to be able to
Mm,
schedule more cases, et cetera. There can be a little bit of pushback on that. I think AI is definitely something that's exciting, but also raising a few eyebrows within organizations and figuring out exactly
right.
how we're going to responsibly and ethically use it. We very much think that it has to be married to business objectives. We want to understand those objectives. We're not just implementing technology for technology's sake, but I do think one of the opportunities is there's just mountains of data that are either disconnected, or it's the wrong data, or doctors are drowning in some of the wrong data. I do think there's the opportunity to structure all of this unstructured data to feed back the necessary insights to enable folks and care teams to provide better care, to foresee
Mm.
dangerous events. And yeah, that takes a little bit of convincing to some care teams. But again, I think this is coming down the path, and everything that we've been collectively experiencing over the last 5 years, the buzz, some of the trepidation, it's something that we're going to have to, drive through together.
Well, listen, doing something that's different is hard, and you're going to have some level of apprehension around it. Can you maybe even share some specific examples of how the tech has improved surgical outcomes?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think I was talking to one of our leads earlier, and so we're able to identify, potential blood loss within a patient or a procedure, and some of our video has been able to retroactively look at something to be able to send alerts to teams that says, "Hey, if we see this." This is the proper response to this. And one of our organizations that did this experienced a 53% increase in the identification of potential blood loss incidents. So, like materially dangerous events, we're able to look at the game tape, to use the
Yeah.
Moneyball example, and say, hey, these are when we need to be on red alert. We're able to look at past experiences and teach the care teams, better educate the nurses and surgeons when we see something that is leading itself to these adverse outcomes. There's plenty of exciting applications for that, for both patient safety and just functional use within a hospital. One of our cameras deduced that there was no added benefit to cleaning and turning over an operating room with 4 FTEs than there were with 2 FTEs. And so we made the recommendation, hey, let's utilize those 2 FTEs somewhere else within the organization. Have them go clean or prep something different, which really helps with resources. There's all sorts of things that we're able to uncover, particularly through video camera and all of the other, process improvement activities that we work with at these surgical teams.
Super interesting. You mentioned around the training about the sort of the intervention of sharing those insights. How does that happen? Does that happen as the team is collectively getting together? Does that happen virtually? Because naturally, when I think about surgery, being in the OR, like there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's hard to wrangle these folks. What have you found to be efficient and actually doable?
Yeah, I mean, you can create assessments to be able to give personalized feedback. You can work with some of their clinical champions and administrative teams to deliver these feedback loops with teams, virtual sessions. Yeah, it's fascinating. And like we said earlier, some are a little bit more reticent to review the game tape, but the majority of them love to be able to figure out. I mean, they're in it to get the best outcomes typically. Like that's
Yeah.
typically why people get into healthcare, is to take better care of folks. And if you can show them, hey, literally your arm angle is 15 degrees off here. We've had surgeons that say, no, that's wrong. I've been doing this for 10 years. And you show them the game tape of this. And the majority of them say, oh, okay, well, I didn't recognize that. Let me give that a shot. So it's a real positive thing towards the ability to continue honing one's craft, the team-based dynamics between
But
the
who does
team.
that come from? Does that come from another surgeon to surgeon? Like, is it peer to peer, someone sharing that, or is it like, does it matter who it comes from? Meaning, is it the message? Is it the messenger? A combination of both? What have what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you've seen one, you've seen one. So it depends on the organization and what their structure looks like, and
Right.
who's sponsoring the initiative. But sometimes it'll come from the perioperative leads or the OR managers. Sometimes it will come from some other administrative individual. Sometimes they bring us in to be the messengers. We have tech-enabled consulting services where we're literally doing biopsies on specific procedures to say, why are we performing as we're performing? Why are we having more adverse events in this service line than we are across town at our sister hospital? The new CMS team model has kind of brought that to light, where we're working with some of the selected hospitals that are saying, hey, we've got this test coming at these 5 mandatory bundled procedures
Right.
a year down the line, and we're looking at a lot of pain a year from now once this model goes live. Help us dive into these 5 procedures or this one procedure and understand exactly what is going on right now. So we'll conduct with our chief clinical officer feedback loops with their administrative champions, with their clinical champions, with some of their surgeon leads on exactly what we're seeing and how we can put together protocols to improve performance or
Mm.
stem whatever inefficiencies we're finding. Typically, the biggest issue that we uncover everywhere is variability. I think that's the biggest um, challenge in surgery right now is as much as we want it to be Lean Six Sigma and this replicable process,
Right.
it's not like that. It's more off the, shooting from the hip. It's off the cuff. And standardizing that stuff, giving equitable tools, data, and knowledge to best practices is something where we can winnow that gap and better produce better outcomes. And so it all depends. We work
To,
with the teams to best deliver those messages and then institute them.
to hear that to some degree it's off the cuff as a healthcare consumer, as a someone that is involved in the system, that's that's a little, I don't know how I feel about that.
It's scary, Michael. One of the main things that always stuck with me, that I talk about a lot at conferences with folks to like kind of magnify the problem, is that like operating rooms are the second most dangerous place on earth behind battlefields. Now, take that with a grain of salt. I mean, obviously there's some inherent danger to going under the knife, but our chief clinical officer always likes to talk about that people think about them like airplanes, right? Like you get on an airplane and it feels dangerous, but it's just something you sort of trust. It's got a 99.99999% success rate. It's anything but. Surgery is 20,000 times more risky than getting on an airplane. The equivalent of a jumbo jet goes down every day globally due to preventative unnecessary complications. It's a crazy statistic. And so I'm not looking to scare you, but I think you understand why there's so much more attention that are going into this. It's a big area for improvement. It's quite exciting.
It is. I'm a fan of Atul Gawande, the author for the Checklist Manifesto. It's a good read.
And
So I know that.
you'd be surprised how often, we can monitor checklist adherence, and doctors and surgical teams are literally like what separates a fifth quintile surgeon or surgical team can often just be little things like washing your hands or following
Right.
steps 10 and 11 of the 13-step checklist.
That's crazy. So kind of tying this back around to the value-based care. I know you've been a big champion of value-based care throughout your career. Where do you see some of the biggest opportunities and um, also some of the pitfalls over the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we work with places where surgery is performed to drive safer, smarter surgery. Operating rooms, hospitals, ASCs is a big growing market, as you know. Those are our core customers. But when you drive better surgical outcomes, less adverse events, better cost containment, everybody with an aligned financial relationship benefits as well. And so there's a lot of interest from upstream constituents in either helping support better processes and driving better outcomes, or helping to subsidize or endorse or recommend. And so we're also getting interest in working with ACOs, enablement, value-based enablement companies. We're doing a pilot with a payer around looking at surgical variability between their various parts in their community. Why should there be materially worse outcomes or more
Right.
C-sections on this side of the street than on this side of the street? And
Mm.
how can we close that gap? How can we drive the best maternal outcomes for our community? Payers, employers have a huge vested interest in, surgery is one of their largest expenditures. How do they get their athletes back on the field as quickly and painlessly as
Yeah.
possible? I mean, that's a huge
Yeah. Yeah.
interest of theirs. The
But
MedMal
but but but
industry.
you mentioned something
Right.
around so just all these different players that are involved. You're kind of at that nexus, at the intersection. Your technology, your services, but you're dealing with providers, payers, employers. How do you how do you foster collaboration amongst these groups, especially when sometimes their goals don't always align?
Yeah, I mean it's early days on a lot of the collaboration, but you're right. It's getting the stakeholders together. It's aligning around mutually beneficial outcomes. And you're right. Sometimes there's perverse incentives between payers and hospitals. Sometimes when one makes money, the other loses money, or one is more welcoming of some sort of event. And so, yeah, that can be kind of tough. Fortunately, um, there is a lot of goodwill that is to be had right now in the industry for investing in things that um, improve the bottom line, but also go beyond the bottom line, right? Not to be naive that
Mm,
it's
yeah,
exclusively around the bottom line, but there's a lot of beneficial things that we can do to support and give back to our communities and the health and welfare of your communities for payers, your employees, for employers. That's a big interest. That's something that you can attract employees on. That's how you can get beneficiaries in there. There's press that can be had. There's surgical improvement collaboratives that are being looked at that you can deliver press releases on that get others in the tent to be able to share these best practices, to
that's
be
right.
able to
That's right.
have a rising tide raise all boats. And so it's very exciting. It's not easy though, because at the end of the day, and to your question about pitfalls, surgery isn't the first thing that someone thinks about with value-based care. They're still blocking and tackling up front.
That's
They're
right.
still triaging unnecessary visits and ED visits and PCP to specialist ratios, all of these other things that are sort of front of mind. But it's coming down the line. CMS is saying that it's really important with the mandatory bundles. I think there's going to be a lot more interest in it. And so there's going to be a lot more need to lock arms. It's seen as very innovative. It's seen as sort of one of those next things to be able to bend the cost curve to materially improve quality outcomes. So we're optimistic.
It's really encouraging to hear. So, listen, I see the Liverpool FC little shield back there, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask any Liverpool FC questions. So, Jurgen Klopp, famous manager, celebrated globally, has now since sort of left Liverpool. Tactical genius, and also his man management leadership style, bar none, probably in a level of its own. Are there any lessons that you've kind of drawn from his approach that you've applied to, your professional life?
Gosh, well, I wish I was as good of a man manager as he was. What's the football analogy? Pep Guardiola buys stars and he makes stars. So he found gems from various leagues or mid-sized clubs and coached them, managed them into being stars. I think he also just had sort of a zest for life and sort of an exuberance that was unmatched in European football. And then I also read something of a biography that's coming out that said that he was about the most present human being that you could ever meet. If someone pulled him off to the side for 20 minutes, it would be like you were the only person. And all of his players got that same level of attention, all the media, all the cooks and trainers that worked with him. And I just that's one of my goals for 2025 is to imbue those type of things. But yeah, no, it was it was like losing a family member last year when Jurgen finally decided to hang it up. Fortunately, our replacement looks to be pretty special as
Yeah.
well. Fingers crossed. I don't know when this will air,
Wow.
but hopefully
Wow.
Liverpool's still in good clove at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just along those same lines, I'm just curious because, who have been some of your most influential mentors, figures that are in your life, and, how have they sort of shaped the way that you think about leadership and about innovation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, I'm glad you gave me permission to use Jurgen Klopp for that because that's one from afar. But definitely, I think he's one of the more inspirational people to look up to. I had some professors back in school through the entrepreneurship program that were very influential that got me into early stages of entrepreneurship that were great mentors of mine. There were the two leads at the Camden Group, which became GE Healthcare Camden Group. taught me a lot about business development and what the client delivering value to the client,
Mm,
and that shaped a lot of my subsequent startup years. And then both my parents were, in healthcare and healthcare entrepreneurs. My father became a serial entrepreneur, which I still have in my blood, and I still tap him on a daily basis for business insights and acumen. I probably adopt far too little of it, but it's always a treat to be able to get into the chamber with him.
that's
How about
really
you?
cool.
What are
That's really
yours?
cool.
Do you ever get asked on these?
Yeah, I mean, we're just having a conversation here. I'd say one of the most influential figures in my life was a coach. His name is Richie. And Richie, me and a group of my friends who are lifelong friends, we all played in the same team together. And many of the principles that he taught us, I still use every single day, honestly, every day. And I've had the chance to sort of share that with him that, hey, you've really have left a huge mark on me. And they say that a coach in 1 week has the ability to touch more lives than most people do in their entire lives. So coaches for sure are important.
Yeah.
Bit of that. Let's as
That's
we
a
kind of
that's a
start to,
soccer coach, by the way. You're a
of
big
course,
soccer guy, right?
of course, of course, of course.
I never
So
asked you who's your squad. You a Liverpool guy, or how do
listen,
you
I
follow
have an
something?
admiration. I have it. Liverpool is a really interesting club. Unfortunately, my club is about 30 minutes away. Manchester United. Been a
Oh
supporter since
no. Well, I
1992.
I like I like your new coach though. I think it's gonna take a little
Yes,
while to buy enough players to fit the scheme, but I think he's
we'll
gonna be a
see.
winner.
We'll
Unfortunately.
see. We'll see. So let's do a little quick lightning round, to kind of wrap things up.
Let's do it.
The book that's had the biggest impact on your leadership style.
Book that's had the biggest impact. Um, well, in my life it's probably Cannery Row, but that's for a different
Okay.
day. I love an anecdote in there from Doc. Um, I think into startup culture, hard thing about hard things is one that I try to leaf
Okay.
through about every year.
Awesome.
But that's a tough one. That's
What?
a cutthroat one. I don't know if that's
Okay.
exactly
Hey,
word
that's
for word.
what about one technology outside of healthcare that fascinates you?
Side of healthcare that fascinates me. Um,
This is where we have the
I would
Jeopardy music
probably,
playing.
yeah, yeah, no, it's probably just the internet and the way that it's democratized information. I just think how small the world is right now, where you can buy anything so quickly. You can stream football games in the third tier from England seamlessly without any buffer. Um, that amazes me and sometimes frightens me because you'd like it to be a little slower and less
Yeah.
instantaneous. But it's amazing.
All right. So two more questions. Okay. I've been thinking about this since I've been staring at that Liverpool FC thing. I want you to imagine Liverpool is teaming up with CareSyntax for a project, a special project. What's the collaboration and how does it blend the world of football and healthcare?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. Kudos, and a fun one too. It depends. I mean, obviously we're a surgical company, and so I shudder to think about any of our players going under the knife. And so, but it's also from like a broader healthcare perspective. If you think of us as like a data shop for anything related to surgery, preoperatively, postoperatively, we also give these feedback loops. We're a clinical data as a service shop, and so to be able to look at anything of their training process, their recovery process, to be able to define the treatment, the patient, the outcome measures, we could work with them on something that says, hey, you're playing Alexi McAllister too frequently. He's in the red zone right now. but let us look into the data. Let us use video. Let us see exactly how much we can push them, how many minutes to be able to better utilize our entire team optimally. I'm sure they already do a lot of that. We could probably help them specifically related to surgery, but if they're listening right now, Arne Slot, we would happily do that clinical data as a service project for your recovery times, anything that you were worried about on the training pitch to help you guys optimally perform. I mean, that's what we do we're doing it with Martini Clinic in Hamburg around prostatectomies, like creating like an optimized playbook around that. We're working with one of the big dogs here. Love to do that for Liverpool to help them in this title charge.
That's awesome. One more around the lines of Liverpool because I'm just thinking about how many epic things have happened at that club. If you could attend one dream Liverpool match, either historically, which one would it be, and who is sitting next to you in the stands?
Wow, that's a good question. Also, so I've been to two Champions League finals, once with my wife and once with an old colleague of mine, Nigel Orenstein. Hi, Nigel. Um, and we won one, we lost one. The answer would probably be, and I'm assuming this isn't reality, so I get to be this current age,
Yeah,
even back then.
we're in a safe space right here. We're in a safe
Yeah, it would be
space.
the 2005 Champions League final in Istanbul
That's
versus
right.
AC Milan, where they were down 3-0 at halftime and came back and won in penalties. Um, I think my wife, she's had her win, so she doesn't need to go again. And it would probably be one of my Liverpool supporting buddies. I've had a lot of people that I've pulled into the fold just by
Yeah.
virtue of proximity to me, or maybe I can go with Nigel just because we were in Paris a couple years ago when we got pipped by Madrid, and that was unfun. We also got pushed up against a fence. That was all the crowd
Yeah.
pushing and stuff. It was a hectic environment. But how about you? What game would you go to?
I would say probably the comeback against Barcelona.
The PSG one?
No, when Liverpool played against Barcelona, they were down like 3-0
Oh,
in
no,
the
no, no. The
first leg, and
Champions
they
League,
came back. Yeah, that
the
Champions League
Champions League
match, and they came back.
semifinal.
Yeah, and they came back and they won 4-0. Yeah, I'd go to
That's
that one.
for that's for all teams or just for Liverpool
No,
specific?
just for Liverpool. I'm just picking for Liverpool. For
I think you
Liverpool.
outdid my answer, by the way. I think now that I think about it, I'd rather be at Anfield than the Champions League final.
I say the Anfield is just it's magical. Listen, Dan, this has been a really fun conversation. As we wrap up, I just want to maybe one parting thought message you have for those that you'd like to leave the audience with. What's one thing, what's one takeaway, one action item that you can leave with them for those that have listened to this awesome conversation?
I I think I would say support others in healthcare. It's a tricky business, especially in innovation. I see a lot of dancing on other failures and I told you so's when I think it's a struggle to build something real that brings value, and that's why it's so meaningful. So I would hope that we would all kind of band together and pick each other up and learn from that stuff and continue working to improve the healthcare system. I know that's in a little bit of pain right now too, and
That's right.
do a better job at articulating what we are doing to drive meaningful impact in the healthcare system and why decisions are made the way they are. I think that would be something that would be really positive for 2025 and for everyone else, just bump that lamp, if you know the old Disney phrase.
Mhm.
Just do the little things and do them incredibly well.
Right on. So for those that have tuned in, if you found this conversation to be really meaningful and helpful for you, please make sure that you like it, subscribe, share it. If you wouldn't mind, that'd be really helpful. So Dan, you're obviously always welcome to come back on, share more interesting stories. I'd love to hear the progress. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, likewise. They'll have to join us for our soccer podcast coming out next year.
That's right.